Bartholomew Town, bringing Rhode Islanders closer to their world since 2018. Brought to you in part by the University of Rhode Island Online, Newport Film, Half Street Group, Navigant Credit Union, and the Audubon Society of Rhode Island.
Bartholomew Town.
Welcome into Bartholomew Town. I'm Bill Bartholomew. Today we welcome for the first time on the program Greg Brailsford from RI'ers. A lot of people know RI'ers, the brand. It's a progressive news organization, and there's an association with the reporter Steve Alquist, who has since in the last year plus gone on to do his own thing with a Substack and RI Future. Greg, welcome to the show. First of all, before we get into our discussion of the day, set the table. What is RI'ers for anybody who doesn't know what it is, and what's your role with the entity?
Sure. RI'ers is a progressive news organization, and we've always been a progressive news organization from when Steve Alquist started the organization back many years ago to right now. Steve was an on-location reporter who went out and did the hard work of reporting on issues from trans rights to gay rights to homelessness to everything in between. He still does a great job with that on his Substack. Because RI'ers is now a single-person entity, so to speak, we have a few volunteers that help us out, but overall, I operate the majority of it. And unfortunately, I have a full-time position owning another company. So my role with RI'ers is to produce the best information we can for our audience with the limited resources we have. I've kind of switched a little bit of our coverage from all local to some national stuff. And I think that's important. And the reason we do that is because, in my opinion, I think a lot of the national media misses important stories, whether it's stuff about the FTC coming in and dropping lawsuits against corporations that they, on the previous administration, had put forward. I think that's important to people to know how that will affect them. The bottom line is that we try to run stories that are informative to our audience, that matter to our audience. A lot of news media will run stories like, for example, someone was killed in Cranston. Well, that's great, but that doesn't really, benefit many people to know that information. So we provide information that we feel is important to know, whether it's national or local. That's what we try to cover. And we try to punch up, not down. When we cover subjects, we try to cover, power. Is power being abused? Is the people that are in charge of running our state, are they doing a good job? And if not, why not? And that's kind of what we're all about right now.
So one of the initiatives that RI'ers has worked on, has developed, is BillBuddy. This is really cool, and it hasn't gotten a lot of coverage. It was interesting when we were talking about this a week or so ago. You said that a lot of what BillBuddy is, and we'll certainly get you to explain what it is to the audience, but that it's something that some media outlets might say, well, wait a second, we don't want to cover this because it detracts from our own reporting abilities. And I found that to be an interesting conversation in and of itself. But just to set the table again, what's BillBuddy, and where did this idea come from, and how did you implement it?
Sure. So BillBuddy is a free tool completely free. We don't even run ads on the page for Rhode Islanders. That it automatically tracks every single bill that's introduced at the State House and categorizes, organizes it, and summarizes it in a way that makes complex legislative information accessible to everybody. You can look up a bill, and it will tell you in plain English what this bill says, what it intends to do. It tries not to guess what its intentions are per se, because we don't want to be biased one way or the other, but it tries to interpret, if you have a 20-page bill of legalese, it tries to explain that in layman's terms that you can understand. Here's what the bill does, here's what it doesn't do, and here's who it's going to affect, and so on and so forth.
So when this idea first emerged, because it's a great tool that, frankly, states, honestly, municipalities, and certainly at the federal level, it's something that makes a ton of sense. Where did the original concept come from, and how did you populate this kind of real time, or maybe not real time, but certainly there's a lot of inputs to include here when you talk about all the pieces of legislation and all the detail there. So where did the idea come from, and how did you make it happen?
Yeah, so this is actually when Steve was still with us. This is an idea I came up with. And at the time, we just did not have the resources to put it together. And the resources became available. And I want to thank again our generous supporters who still continue to donate to us every month, every year, and whatnot. They're the reason that we built this. I like to tell them, like, you're voting with your money. If you support us,
Right.
it's telling us we should build stuff like this. And so I definitely want to thank them. But we came up with the idea because, as you mentioned, when you watch, your typical local news, channel 1210, whoever, Projo, they don't talk about every bill that comes out. And they talk about bills that either their producers or their people feel is important to their audience. And there may be a lot of motivations why those bills are, that they feel those bills are important to their audience. And it may not be in your best interest. It may be in their best interest. And so we decided, why should news media pick and choose which bills you should know about? You should be able to know about any bills that come out and know right away in a quick, 10 or 12 word summary, what does this bill do? What is this bill about? And then if you want, you can go in and learn more about the bill. And we have longer summaries. We have extended information about who it affects. Is there other constitutional issues? What are the pros and cons if you're a progressive? What are the pros and cons if you're a conservative? And so on and so forth. And I think this information is valuable to anybody, whether you're on, again, the left side of the aisle or the right side of the aisle. We try to, split it right down the middle and don't try to take sides. If you look at our summaries, you'll see that the summaries are the same, written the same way, whether it's a bill introduced by a Republican, that's a far right, perhaps conservative bill, or if it's a more to the left side of bill. It's the summaries are not written with any bias. It doesn't try to say, oh, this is a bad bill because it has this or whatever. It says, here's what the bill does. You can make your own decision, but here's what the bill does. And if you kind of want to know, all right, I don't feel like reading all that stuff, what's in it for me? You can go to the pros and cons, find your ideology, go to the pros and cons and read about what possibly could be good or bad about the bill. But ultimately, we want, you to make your decision and you to be able to see, okay, so I'm in healthcare. I want to know about healthcare bills that are going to affect me at my job at the hospital. You can go to BillBuddy. You can find the category drop down and find the healthcare. Click on that, and it'll show you all the bills that have been introduced that relate to healthcare. And you're right, Bill. There's a lot of inputs that go into this, and it was a lot of work behind the scenes to get it right the first time. And the reason you have to get it right the first time is because when we put this out there, we obviously have our AI suite do the summaries of these bills. And you're sending the entire bill text to the AI and you're requesting information back. And if you decide after the fact, oh, we should include this new thing or another feature or another input, well, you've got to run every single bill all over again. And it costs money to do that. So our first go around here was certainly not perfect. There are things that I think are missing. There are things perhaps that we decided we probably don't need in the future. But I think overall, most Rhode Islanders would feel that this is a valuable tool that they could make use of to learn about legislation that they otherwise may ignore or not know about.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's fundamental that people have access to this kind of information. I mean, they do if they want to do the work for themselves, but let's be honest about it. Summaries and portals like this make it way more accessible than someone combing through, the calendar for the Rhode Island Senate or something like that. So you mentioned there's obviously, it makes total sense that there would be AI aspects to this. Have you found that the summaries and that the work that's being produced here, the work product, is pretty accurate? Have you had any situations where you've gone, I'm not so sure I agree with that summary? It's also an interesting sort of companion discussion on the ability of AI right now, which is so fundamental in so many of our information systems advancements. Can AI accurately break down a bill and give you to your satisfaction personally as the producer of BillBuddy?
So, great question. When we started building this, ChatGPT had just introduced ChatGPT 4, which at the time was a major breakthrough. And we were originally testing this with ChatGPT 3.5, which, if you're familiar with AI, is a not so great AI. We had to write some significant prompt engineering to get it to do what we want, but we were actually pretty satisfied overall with what it gave us. ChatGPT 4 came out and was more expensive, but it was way more accurate and gave us exactly what we wanted to that level. And we ended up, I think the first year it cost us probably like $600 or $700 to summarize every bill. That's just how expensive it was back then. And then ChatGPT's main competitor, Claude, introduced Sonnet 3.5, which was a lot cheaper and also better than ChatGPT 4. And since then, I'm not going to summarize every AI we've tested with, but overall, right now, we're using Google Gemini 2.5 Pro to summarize the majority of the summaries. And Google's solution is not only the cheapest solution for the high-end AIs, but does a fantastic job, especially with we have two types of summaries you can get for a bill. You can get a regular summary for everyday people, or there's a child summary you can get. And child summaries have been a big hit for people that, even adults have told us that they read the child summaries because it dumbs it down for basically a 9 or 10-year-old and explains how the bill works. And previous AIs were still explaining it, the child summary, in too much of an adult language. And we found that Google's solution ended up explaining it exactly how we wanted it explained, and we were very happy with the result. But you make a good point about the whole AI thing. When people hear AI, the first thing they usually think of is, oh, you go in and ask it a question, and it gives you a completely wrong answer. You hear that a lot. You go in, especially with Google doing their AI summaries now, you type in a search term, and it basically tries to scrape the web really quick and find an answer, and then gives you what it thinks is the right answer. In my opinion, again, this is what my company does for our. This is our whole business. But basically, AI is not as good when you ask it a question. You're asking it information like, who did this, or what did this, or what is your opinion on this, or whatever. AI it'll give you the answer, a good answer, a lot of the time, but that's not where AI shines, in my opinion. Where AI shines is when you provide it the information and then ask it to summarize it or pull information out of what you gave it. Because when you give it the information, it generally will not hallucinate. It will not make up things that don't exist because it's pulling it from the information you provided. So we tested probably 250 bills or so this session before we went live with the new AI to make sure that these summaries were not only accurate, that wasn't really an issue, but making sure that it gave us what we wanted. And number two, did not try to insert its opinion. That's the thing where we had to really prompt it, say, listen, we don't want you to explain what you think the bill does, what you think its intent is. We don't want any opinions being expressed here. We want you to just read the bill and explain what it does. And that's what we want. It's important that this be right, because if it sounds biased, if it sounds like it's calling conservative bills one way and liberal or progressive bills a different way, people aren't going to trust it. And, we've gotten a lot of great feedback from conservatives that I was very happy to hear, because as a progressive organization, there's naturally going to be a little bit of a trust issue there where, okay, well, you're a progressive organization. How we know that you're going to treat conservative bills fairly? And the feedback we've gotten from conservatives on Twitter, by email, et cetera, is, you know what, this is a great tool. There isn't any bias here, and it's very informative and helpful. And it's really cool to hear that, because we know progressives are going to have no issue with it, because again, we're not a progressive organization is not going to come out with bills that are summarized to be biased towards the right, but there's certainly a concern that they may be biased against the right. And so we're happy to see that people are noticing that is not the case.
Yeah. A couple of things on the infrastructure of it, because I kind of want to wrap with more of the flavor or the meaning, the actual reason why this exists. But I find it really interesting that you mentioned it, and it's certainly fundamental, the inputs, that what you literally type in or put into a chat box is so critical. And that's the skill. And we're kind of getting into the macro conversation right now, but you mentioned Claude and Anthropic rolling out two new versions of their AI suite shortly, which is with Claude. And AI is moving so quickly. This is an example of where AI can really benefit the bridge between, or creating a bridge between, everyday people and government. Do you sense that this is going to, as AI continues to become more and more accurate and responsive to those inputs, Do you feel like this is something, I don't want to say it's going to replace the news, because it won't. You're always going to need that opinion and sort of that executive summary in some way. But is this an early indicator of how AI is going to permanently change political reporting and perhaps other bits of reporting? Are you getting the sense that you're an early entrant into a new version of news that's AI generated but with human inputs?
Bartholomew Town.
Are you ready to take the next step in your career? At URI Online, they offer business and leadership-focused programs designed to fit your life. Whether your goal is to advance your career in fields like public administration, supply chain management, or training and development, their online programs provide the flexibility you need with a high-quality education you deserve. Learn more from experienced faculty and collaborate with a network of professionals, all from the comfort of your home or wherever life takes you. Visit uri.edu/online to explore programs and start building your future today. URI Online. Learn anywhere with us. Birds are disappearing from our landscape at a rapid pace. Over 1/3 of those breeding on Audubon Society of Rhode Island's wildlife refuges are in decline. Climate change has taken a toll on their migration, nesting, and food sources. While science is highlighting the problem, Audubon is working on real solutions with a plan to rapidly reduce their carbon emissions. The organization will be free of fossil fuels by 2030, with renewable energy powering Audubon's buildings, equipment, and vehicles. To shape our future, all of us must act. Learn more about Repowering Audubon, their avian research, and how you can join their fight for climate resiliency. Visit asri.org/repower. Newport Film screens the latest critically acclaimed documentary films year-round across Rhode Island. Like a film festival, Newport Film often gets early access to films before they're available online or in theaters. Stay up to date on their latest screening events at newportfilm.com or on Instagram @NewportFilm. As Rhode Island's first ever member-owned credit union, Navigant Credit Union has been a staple in the local business community for more than 108 years. Yeah. Today, Navigant is a $3.4 billion institution serving more than 136,000 members across 25 physical branch locations. But since its founding in 1915, the mission has never changed. Navigant Credit Union's team of financial professionals have remained committed to improving the financial well-being of the families, businesses, and communities they serve across Rhode Island. Learn more at navigantcu.org. Half Street Group brings a new generation's perspective to leadership communications, strategic public relations, and digital marketing. Half Street helps organizations and leaders take control of their own stories and manage their reputations. They get results for their clients by focusing on audience, message, and culture, and by leveraging their decade-long relationship with media and opinion leaders in the Ocean State and throughout New England. Join me and Half Street Group founder and president Mike Rea for a conversation every month about news of the day, the hottest media analysis, and a look behind the scenes at how impactful leaders drive conversations. Learn more at halfstreetgroup.com.
I do feel that we're on the early side, and I say that because I don't see any, at least local media, doing anything really useful with AI at the moment. And I get it. You know, a lot of reporters, a lot of people in media in the IP world are very they don't like AI, and I get it. You know, it looks like, you know, in some use cases AI takes their work and, you know, repurposes it or whatever it is you want to go. I don't want to get too much into that, but when in regard to how we're using it, I think that it's a good, very good thing for the people, because you're taking information that is I won't say inaccessible, but intentionally made hard to understand. And AI is saying it doesn't have to be that way. We're going to take it, and Uprise RI is going to take it and going to feed it into AI, and it's going to give you an accurate summary of what this is and what it means to you and how it could affect you, who it's going to affect, etc. And I think there's a lot of great use cases for AI. You know, again, I'm not ignorant to the fact that AI gets a lot of a bad rap in a lot of circles, especially on, you know, I noticed the blue sky social media in particular. People are definitely against AI because of, you know, image generation and things of that nature. But there's so many more use cases, good use cases for AI than generating images or what people say slop. There's a lot of slop out there, and AI is like AI. I tell people it's a tool, and anyone that's had a contractor come to their house and do bad work knows that they have tools and they didn't use them correctly, and the result is the poor job that you got at your house. And the same thing is true with AI. There are a lot of businesses out there, even big businesses out there, that use AI that just didn't think it through, or didn't test, or didn't do it properly, and they end up embarrassing themselves. They have chatbots that are giving wrong information, which is crazy to me, because again, that information is stuff you should be feeding the AI. So it should be knowing your information, and for it to get it wrong, it's embarrassing, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Right. Lastly, your sort of assessment right now as in introducing this tool of the political media landscape. Why is a tool like this necessary in your mind? Why put so much effort? Why put dollars behind it? It's certainly convenient. It's obvious that it's an opportunity for everyday people and anybody. I mean, not just everyday people. I mean, I'll use this. Why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't anybody want to simplify mundane tasks like sifting through a Rhode Island Senate committee Capitol TV presentation if you can get an AI summary that's accurate? I mean, let's be honest. I guess you miss the body language and some of the diatribes that can happen and things like that. But whatever. What's your overall take, though, that would motivate the introduction of something like this, of the state of the media and the political environment and sort of that whole orbit in Rhode Island right now?
Well, this tool is just the beginning for us. We have to kind of jump on your first question there. What is the impact of this, and why should this tool exist? Well, first of all, what you're seeing now is kind of the beginning of what BillBuddy is going to do. Right now, you go in, you look up a bill, you get information about the bill, and then what do you do from there? Well, you could call your legislator if you want, look up their information, call them up, send them an email, go to a town hall if they have one, etc. But this is America, and we're not ignorant to the fact that a lot of people kind of want things put in front of them and want to make things easy. I want to contact my legislator, but I don't feel like going and looking them up and doing all that, extra work. I'm just, never mind. I'll just keep this in the back of my head. And if I get into a conversation with someone, maybe I'll talk about it, but it doesn't go further than that. What we plan on doing is introducing two new features up front. The first one being the ability to ask questions. So you got a long bill and it's summarized, but you still want to know, for example, it's a car insurance bill, and it has all these new limits and all these new points that it tries to make and tries to change, and things about the insurance industry. And you could basically click a button, say, all right, I have a 16-year-old who has been driving for so long. They have this insurance, how does this affect me? Or will this affect my 16-year-old? Or will this affect me if, for example, it's a bill about ride sharing? I do ride share part-time. I drive this. Will this affect me? And it'll answer your question immediately, directly, using the bill text. So you don't have to read the whole thing to figure out if your situation applies. So that's the first thing. That is hopefully going to be coming before the session ends by the end of the month. But if not, we'll certainly be ready for next session for 2026. The second thing we're doing, which I feel is going to be really super important, is you'll be able to sign up for an account, put your voter address in. It will link you to your legislators. And then when you see a bill, you can immediately click a button, oppose or support, and it will email. You type in the reasons why. It will ask you, why do you support or oppose this bill? And you answer the question. It'll send an email to your representatives saying, hi, I am so-and-so. I'm a constituent located here. I want you to support/oppose this bill, and here's why. And it sends that information in. And we kind of did a beta over the past year or two. We kind of ran a beta of this and found that people thought it was very useful, and people did use it quite a bit. We ended up having to scrap that for the new revitalization of the BillBuddy that you see now, but that's going to be included for certain next year. So to answer your question, the goal is to get people engaged and to support good legislation and oppose bad legislation. And normally the news media does this by merely covering a bill. They'll say, for example, there's a bottle bill coming out. You're going to have to pay 10 cents on every can or bottle you have. And the fact that they just the fact that they're covering it outright tells the viewer this is important. Now, whether it's important or not, the fact that they're covering that bill and not any other bills is subtext is this is an important bill you should know about. But is it really? And this gives you the decision-making process there. You get to decide, is this bill important or not, vice versa. Now, we do have a rating for every bill called an importance factor. And what that really just measures is how many people will this bill affect and what's the impact that is going to happen to them. So, for example, a bill that introduces universal health care in Rhode Island, that's going to get a score close to 100 because it's going to affect everybody. And it's a pretty major thing, providing, included health care for everybody, free of charge, no having to get insurance. Whereas a bill that renames a street in Coventry, for example, is going to have an important score of close to 0 because, it's only important to literally the people in that area. Nobody else in Rhode Island really cares that much. And we have filters that you can go to on BillBuddy that allow you to filter by those things. Let's say I only want to see the bills that have an importance rating of 80 or higher. So I only want to see the really, really important stuff. And you can do that. The second thing to kind of cover more of the AI, what we're doing with AI, is next year we actually might launch this in the summer, depending on resources and time, but we're launching another product called Money Trail. And what Money Trail will do is scrape all the campaign finance reports that are filed with the state by our legislators. It will scrape them, it will produce a report, and you'll be able to see who's funding your legislator, how much they're funding them, where it's coming from, and a whole host of information. So if your legislator is making unusual votes or voting against their constituency or just, odd behavior, you can kind of get an idea perhaps of where that's initiating from, where that's coming from. And I think that's super important. So the bottom line is, Bill, the resources and these tools we're putting out there are so that voters can more closely engage with their legislators and be more part of the democratic process.
Greg Brailsford, Uprise RI. Where can people find BillBuddy? Is there a direct link, or should they head to Uprise's website?
You can go to upriseri.com and click on BillBuddy in the top menu. Or if you're on your mobile phone, just click a little menu burger, pull it up, and click on BillBuddy. And you'll go right to our new bills page that shows you all the new bills that have been introduced by date. So you'll see the most recent ones there at the top. You can also click on filters that I just talked about and filter them by category, by importance, by criteria such as, how it affects your privacy or how it affects the environment. There's a lot of different tools there. And when you go there, find any bill you want, click on it, and you'll get a whole host of information about that bill. And hopefully you find it useful.
Hey, thanks for stopping by Bartholomew Town. For more content, follow me on Instagram @BillBartholomew.